run for commissioner, he had some concerns about them selling the property, which a lot of people really didn't know anything about, and kudos to Rod for bringing it up. Fortunately, he lives in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And, I saw that on the front page of the paper, and it kind of caught my eye. I said, what's going on? Why would they be selling property just north of Updike Park? And as well, there's a 24.5-acre plot across the road from the nursing home there. It kind of surrounds the township building, and they've decided that they want to sell this property. And there've been a lot of questions asking, why do you want to sell that property? What brought this property on the horizon? I mean, the county owns plots of land all over the place, and how did it happen at this property? Well, the commissioners they told us, well, we studied this property, and we've been talking about it for a while, and it's a low performing asset of the county, and we just think that money could be better served maybe given a facelift to the towers out there at the county home. They believe it's county home property, and that's fine. It may very well be. Or they could use the money to pay down the bond that they have out there. Apparently, it's at a 5%. I don't have any of that information, but
sure.
Just going by what they tell you, which can be dangerous. But anyhow, so I looked at this and I started getting some numbers around, and we went to the commissioner's office, and we asked him a few questions. Joe Slicker and I went up there, and what they say is it's a low performing asset of the county, and we're not farmers, and we need to sell it and put the money someplace where it can do more good. So I kind of ran some numbers, and we got a hold of the numbers that Terry Rummel put together, and a lot of questions on those numbers yet as well that haven't been answered.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what I found when I looked at that property. I took 50 acres that they're going to sell.
Okay.
And I went to the recorder's office, and I did some searching, and book number 1 at the recorder's office.
Okay. Book number 1. Let's go backwards just a minute here. Let's totally define. This is a piece of ground that sits right there by, for a lack of a better term, the county home. Okay. I mean, I think everybody knows that the county owns some property out in that neighborhood.
Yeah, they have 240 acres out there that they bought in 1872. There was a bond passed in 1871. Okay. There's a lot of people in the county back in those days that, didn't have a lot of family here. There was a lot of frontiersman type settlers coming in the area, and there's a lot of land given away by the government and for homesteaders. Well, so the county was looking at how do we pay for these people that don't have anybody to help take care of them. They need a place to go, and so what they did is they passed this levy to start the county poorhouse. Mm-hmm. A couple years later, changed the county infirmary. A couple years later, changed the county farm. Several names. It's county home now. And what they did back in those days is they actually ran a farm, and it was they tried to keep the taxpayers from having to pay for all their housing and whatnot, and they ran the farm at a profit. And of course, now this day and age, we certainly aren't going to ask people to go out and weed gardens and take care of cows and whatnot.
A whole different time back.
A lot of different dynamics. Yeah. So now they have this property out there, and it's actually, if anybody's ever been to Updike Park, there's a driveway goes back in there, and there's a little airfield where people have the model airplanes that they fly out there, and they've been using that and done a lot of improvements to the property, and they're not selling that piece anymore. It was on the table in the beginning, and then they decided not to sell that part, and so they got a 50-acre field there, which, by the way, I should say, they did pass a resolution Monday saying that they're not going to sell any of this property at this point. Right. The thing that does bother me is I have talked to a few people in the county courthouse, and they've said, well, right now they're doing title searches on this property. They're getting deeds, any deed restrictions that might go. They're really trying to answer a lot of the questions that we brought up to them. Sure. Which is a good thing. I'm glad they've tabled it. They did more than table it. They actually passed a resolution to not sell it at this point.
Okay, and this is all right. Hillside Country Living is what the now county home is called for anybody that might be new to the area, right?
That's right.
It's called Hillside Country Living, and it is right next to Updike Park area for anybody that's not familiar with that location, but might be familiar with those two names.
Exactly, and Updike Park is only a park in name. It's not really designated a park like you have Bible Park. If you look at Bible Park, it was deeded to the county by the Bible family, and it must stay a park. If it ever is not a park, they decide not to use it for a park, it would, I don't know, I'd have to look at the deed restrictions on that, maybe go back to the family or whatever.
Okay.
But Updike Park is always, it's just been, it's a good thing. I believe they kept that old barn out there, they rent it out, and my understanding has been pretty good job renting that place. A lot of people use it.
And they've just updated it.
Updated the barn.
Updated the barn so that folks maybe can have wedding receptions maybe out there, or a family gathering or whatever they envision down the road with this historic building. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So but now they've got this 50 acres, and they say, okay, this is a non-performing asset. And I say, okay, let's just do some numbers. And well, I'm not the best numbers guy there is, but I know people that are.
Yeah.
And so I made a call to my banker, and I made a call to CPA that does my taxes and handles all my stuff there. And I said, how can I determine the rate of growth on that property? Well, how much did they pay for it? Well, they paid $175 an acre.
Okay. Back in 1872.
72.
Okay.
So they said, well, what you would do is said, look at it like this. If you'd have taken $175, we'll just do 1 acre, and you put that in the bank, gathering 2% interest.
Sure.
What would that be worth today? Well, that comes out to $3,089.74.
Okay.
Okay, I've had these numbers checked. Those are a good, solid number. I feel good about them.
Okay, so
I said, okay, so what's that property? What's that property you think it's going to sell for? We asked the county. Well, we're looking to get $3,500 an acre.
Okay, all right.
So if you right there, we're doing. Let's just call it 2%. It's a little more than 2%, but it's 2%. Well, what other income is off that property? Well, you've got right now they're doing a CRP, or they could farm it.
And now a CRP, for somebody that doesn't understand what a CRP is, what's a CRP?
CRP is run through the FSA office, which is Farm Service Agencies. That's a federal agency, and what they do is they come in and they say, okay, we've got some property that it's highly erosive. Maybe it's in a floodplain, and that program was set up to pay people to not farm it because it's bad for society to farm this parcel of land right here.
Sure,
So
we
don't want to.
It
Yep.
affects what
You get the big rains and all the corn fodder, bean fodder, whatever, it all runs down into the stream. We really don't want that to happen because obviously we've got a problem at Lake Erie, although this goes way back before the problems existed at Lake Erie.
Right.
So what they do is they've had that in CRP land for the last 8 years. It's on a 10-year program. So they're making money enough to pay the taxes on that land. In fact, it makes there's 80 acres there, and so what it does, it pays the taxes on the entire 80. And I believe the reason for that is, and I've talked to a auditor that goes around audits all of our county agencies, and he does several. He's an auditor for the state, so he pretty knowledgeable about this stuff. I said, well, why are we paying taxes on that county land there? Because the county won't typically have to pay taxes on property unless they're making a profit on it, unless they're doing something that makes them money. So that kind of throws it into a different group. If they would literally take this out of the CRP and not farm it, then it would be a tax-free entity.
Right.
So there wouldn't be anything owed on it. It'd just be there for us to have for whatever reason. So let's just say we farm that. So if you farm that 50 acres, and let's just say it's $150 an acre, even though the commissioner stated that there's somebody that would pay $170.
Okay.
That you're going to take in $7,500 a year on that property. So if you take the taxes out of that, $3,000 taxes on the whole 80, we got a $4,500 net.
Okay.
So let's just take a $4,500, and you got a property that's worth $175,000 if you would sell it. So you're looking at a 2.57% net there. So now you take that 2.5%, and you add along that 2% that the growth of the property you're receiving from it. Now you're making 4.5% on that money, on that property. Right. So now I don't understand how you can say that's a non-performing asset of the county.
Sure. Well, and again, the interest rate maybe on and we'll get the commissioners if they want to come in and talk. We'd love to have them talk. In fact, if they want to join us right now on the telephone, they can call us here at the radio station. That's not even a problem as well. But again, I think the first thing they would look at maybe is what is the debt on that home, that note that they might be able to pay off. If that's a 6% note or an 8% note, there might be.
They've told us it's a 5%.
Okay, all right.
Of course, there's a lot of there's a lot of issues with that as well right now. 5%. Terry Rummel says we should be able to refinance all that and get it at 3.5. So
okay,
that even makes these numbers look a little better, I guess. But
sure.
But anyway, so they decided, okay, what we're going to do here. There was some people at the meeting, this last meeting. It was, I don't know, there was 15 or 20 people in there, and one of the people said, hey, what if we would take that and we would you guys are looking for $300,000 because they're also selling a property across the street, and I think that was their target number. What if we would buy that property? If we could raise the funds to buy that property, can we then make it into a park? And they were very receptive about that. You know what, that might be a good idea. Now they were talking $300,000 at the time at the meeting. I'm not sure why, because really that 50 acres is more like $150,000, and that's what the Bryan Times did report.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm thinking, man, that just doesn't seem right to me. I said, you mean we're going to have to take the citizens of Williams County, and we're going to have to raise enough money to buy the property that we already own,
right,
and give it back to the county? I'm thinking, isn't that how the mafia works? You own a business, they come in there and they say, give us some money or we're going to burn your place down.
I don't think they're quite into that, but I understand the analogy in something like that. Now, the money that they're talking about, that somebody was willing to buy this for, any indications as to who these people might be, or was this
Tim Towns was one that suggested that, and I know they had an offer somewhere saying that we might have someone that wants to donate $300,000 to the county and
sure
and give that back. And I don't know who all he's talking about there. I mean, I do know a fellow that did talk to Terry Rummel after the first meeting we had, and he says, I'd be willing to. I said I might be willing to donate $300,000 if we just keep all this land in the, and he just felt really strongly about that, and he didn't say he was going to give the county. He didn't say this is a done deal at all, and so I don't think that's out there.
Sure,
I'm 100% sure it's not out there.
There are people that have that kind of money that may be willing to donate those kind of dollars, obviously, because there are wealthy people around this part of the country. But that does seem like a pretty extravagant amount of money, and what do you want in return is always, I think, the thing that you think about. Okay, you're giving me $300,000 now. What do we give you?
Right.
Depending on who that person is.
Oh, there's a lot of good people out there that do a lot of things. I mean, the Isaac family, they've been very great donors to this town for a long, long time. But
yeah. I've got Scott Leroy with me right now. We're talking a little bit about this piece of property that I think you've seen on the front page of the Bryan Times, and the commissioners have kicked around selling it. They've the other day said they are not going to sell it, but they're still investigating different things. And we're chatting a little bit. And the reason that he's here today is because we really do want to get people thinking about things that go on and being more active in what is going on around our country at this point in time, and in our own backyard. Because I think an awful lot of times these things do happen. They hit the front page of the paper, and most people go, "Who cares?" and it moves on down the road. And then it's 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 50 years from now that they go, well, why in the world did those guys sell that back then? Or, thank goodness they did. Either way, sometimes it works for the good, sometimes it works for the bad. But you need to talk and think about things.
Well, that's the thing. Happening. Colonel Stanky made a very good point at the meeting the other day, when he was a commissioner back in the 60s.
Sure.
And, he went by a chunk of property down there in the southeast part of the county, and they were coming back from Defiance, and one of the commissioners looked over there and said, "Hey, we own that property." And the colonel says, "Good Lord, why do we own that property clear out here in the middle of nowhere? We need to sell that," he says. And he said for 2 years he tried to get them to sell that property. So we could use the money other places, let's just sell it. And well, he said, thank God they never did, because this is what happened. Now we got CCNO out there.
Okay.
And had we sold that property back in the 60s, you can imagine what we would have paid for it.
Sure.
I mean, we wouldn't have had that asset to
Right.
even be considered.
Right.
So, and unfortunately, when the government agency buys property, I think we all know how that goes.
Yeah.
They usually pay double because they usually need it in a hurry, and they go to somebody. It's tough to get land out of a farmer.
Oh, it is. Farmers don't like to sell their property.
No,
of the
most
time.
typically it's not the farmer that sells the property; it's the heirs.
Exactly.
So and that happens. So it's fact of life. But one of the things I've been doing while we're looking at this property, I was out talking to people and happened to ride around in a pickup truck over that property and kind of scoped it out. I said, I got to go see this property for myself. I got to look at it, see what's going on with it. And so I got in a truck and we're riding back there and we're looking over the property and it happened to be one of the township trustees that owned the township building runs the township building across the street where that 24 acres is. And I says, you guys are interested in buying that, huh? He says, yeah, we're interested in buying that. I said, why on earth do you need to buy that? Why would you buy that property? Well, we're landlocked there. We have our building there and we don't have any room for growth there. I said, well, my golly, 24 and a half acres, do you really need that much? Well, you never know what's going to come down in the future, he says. He says, there's a couple reasons why we want it, for future growth. It's, well, you wouldn't need the whole 24. Why don't you just get maybe 2 or 3 acres of it or 5 acres of it? He said, well, right now we have a lot of money in the bank. He said, that money in the bank we're making a rate of 0.05% interest on that.
Sure.
Okay, so that's not much.
Right.
He says if we would buy that property, well, number one, it's going to grow at 2% growth, he said.
Right.
And he said, and secondly, we could farm that, and we could make another 2.5%. And I said, Scott, he said, that's the same thing I'm talking about. He says, yeah, I heard your numbers.
Yeah.
And they did some investigating. I said, you know what, that would be a much better rate of return than our money in the bank.
Yeah, yes,
and
sure.
It's safe.
Sure.
The property, they don't make any more property.
No, the land always pretty much goes up in value, especially good farmland.
Absolutely. And I don't know how good or bad the farmland is, but he says another thing is we've got this county sewer system that the EPA is pushing everybody to do.
Sure.
And he says, we don't know what's going to come down this road. Eventually, we might have to have a property for our own sewer system out here, and it just would make sense to everybody here, and we'd like to have that property.
Okay, all right.
So it doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Sounds like something that maybe we ought to consider hanging on to, and the commissioners the other day decided not to sell it.
They're not selling it, but I do know that, yeah, like I say, they're doing their due diligence. They're trying to answer the questions that are brought up, and I'm glad they're step back and think about this for a little while, but hopefully they'll come to a different conclusion.
Were there quite a few folks at the meeting the other day?
There's I'd say 15 to 20 people in the meeting, and nobody there was in favor of this. And truthfully, there's nobody I've talked to so far. It's always the same question: why do they want to sell it?
Right.
And all I can say is what they've told us, and it's a low-performing asset. And,
Sure.
One of the questions I had at the meeting is, well, you still have another 160 acres over there. Why don't you sell that farmland too? You certainly don't need that much growth for the county home, do you?
Okay.
And
the answer to that one was?
Future growth. We're going to hang on that for future growth.
Okay.
So.
All right. So there is a portion right there that they've decided that maybe there's a reason in their mind to sell it. Now they're not going to sell it, but before the meeting the other day, there was a possibility of it. And it's I think just good that everybody showed up and brought the questions to them and got them thinking, at least, if nothing else.
And I'm glad our commissioners were able to listen to the people and really step back and do some more homework on this and get more public discussion and hopefully in the future when this comes up again, it will be advertised in the paper. I don't think it's completely the commissioner's fault that it wasn't advertised that they were even going to do this. It was just who knows now, this day and age with emails back and forth, and maybe the Bryan Times didn't get it. Who knows how it happened, but I'm not going to put the blame completely on them. But it does need to be more awareness and
Sure.
Give people a chance to come in there. These commissioners, they don't know everything. Who knows everything? But
Nobody does.
I tell you what, you get the people of Williams County, there's a lot of good ideas out there. There's people come up with things that you would never think of.
Yeah.
And so it's always good to get public discussion moving before you make a decision like this. We've had this property for 145 years. Now we're just going to sell it.
Yeah.
And with just two fellas wanting to do this. It just doesn't make sense.
I think one of the was it Lou Hilkert that was opposed to that. Is that what I was reading?
Absolutely, Lou Hilkert, and he was opposed to this land sale, and for he was talking about doing land trades for the sewer system up there in Kunkel and in Alverton, and because they're going to need property up there, and I'm sure if you watch when they end up buying this property, it's a $10 million project that they're doing. Way late. It seems like we should have been on top of this a long time ago because the EPA, when they come down, it's going to be you do it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And Todd Roth is a county engineer doing a great job looking for money for that. And, he's been kind of thrown into this mess. And so what I understand, there's a possibility, even if we get everything that we can get from whatever grant money there is, that it's only going to cover a third of that cost. So we're still going to have to be coming up with about $7 million for them. So to take this land property and do this trade, what they're talking about, I'm not sure how I feel. Well, I know how I feel about that. You don't take property from the many and give it to the few.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm sorry, but I have to pay for my sewer system. Crohn's had to pay for their sewer system. The people that live in the district need to, pay for their own waste.
Yeah, well, and it's become a problem because I don't know how dense the population is. It could be $7 million for however many homes that are going to be affected by this can be a pretty expensive project.
I was driving around up there kind of looking at all that, it's quite a distance between Alverton and Kunkel.
Yes.
And to throw I don't know for the life of me how that's going to happen. It's going to be a very costly thing up there. I mean, and everybody in between the two places, what road are they going to take to hook up, and who's going to have to be in on this? And I'm an old farm boy, and I know how our in the old farmhouses, there's a lot of times that you're just looking into a 55-gallon drum buried out behind the house, and then it goes from there to a field tile, and then it goes into a creek, and it's just the way it used to be done.
Yeah, and again, when you get back into our algae bloom problem that we have in Lake Erie, I mean, the latest study that I read just recently is pointing towards sewer releases, not out of Kunkel, Ohio,
right,
but Detroit, Michigan, and Cleveland, Ohio, big cities that are actually pouring human waste into Lake Erie.
I don't know that there's a large city anywhere in the state of Ohio that doesn't open up their floodgates on a heavy rain and everything runs right through so they don't flood their systems and ruin everything, and it goes right straight to the stream.
It does.
Or the river. And it's a huge problem. And to try to blame the farmers on all this, they're saying, your phosphate's from all that. It's certainly a part of it. Farmers, they don't put things on the fields that they don't have to. It's very expensive.
Right.
So these guys, and they're trying very hard. They're doing mapping of their fields. It's all GPS, and the applicators that put it thin here, heavy there, whatever they need. There's still the issue of how close to a stream do we farm on the big rain? What goes into the stream? I mean, I was very much into that, and I was out doing a lot of research on that. And there's places in Defiance County I seen that the corn stubble's 3 foot deep going in the stream because of farming practices.
Sure.
So it's a twofold problem there, and a lot of that came about after the Clean Air Act.
Right.
When we started taking acid rain out of the sky, and all of a sudden you don't have the acid going into Lake Erie, it used to offset the phosphate. So a lot of people say, well, why do we have this problem now and we didn't used to have? Well, we had other issues then. So you fix one problem, now it's created another. So
and now you have to try to fix that one.
Now we got to try to fix that one.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, do you feel pretty comfortable right at this point in time where we're at with this whole project, with everything being on hold?
Not really. Not when I hear that they're, I just feel like they're regrouping, and I for some reason they're set on selling. Even when we left the meeting yesterday, they decided they were going to not sell the 50 acres. They were going to give this group a chance to try to raise the money to literally buy the property and give it back to them, I guess, or make a donation to them that the commissioners would be happy with. And there's no guarantees on that. Just because they do that doesn't mean that 10 years down the road somebody might come up with an idea, let's sell this property again.
Right.
So, I just think it's this day and age, to have open land like that, you just don't sell it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many more options we could do. Why don't they take part of that 30 and put it into the park system? Separate that field out. Now you're not paying taxes on that 30 acres. You're just paying taxes on the land that you're using. I mean, is that even an option?
Sure, sure.
Parcels don't get split up real easy. So that's be something the commissioners would have to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I think the important thing from my perspective, and that's why I've got you in here today, is because I think people need to think, okay? They need to be active. They need to be part of our government right now. Not that the county commissioners aren't good guys trying to do the best they can do and everything else, but they do represent us, and oftentimes they don't hear from us. They don't hear from the people who say, hey, why are we doing this? So they go ahead and do what they think they're doing.
There's so many
That's the way
people
they
that
can.
just think that it's useless to try to change anybody's mind. I've
Yeah.
been down this road before, and they say, well, what good is it going to do for me? I don't even vote.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, are you kidding me? You don't vote.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
Good,
Huh?
good golly.
I
So,
agree. All right, well, hold on a minute. I need to take a commercial break. You're going to hang with me for a couple more minutes, will you?
sure.
We'll chit-chat a little bit more, but I need to spend some time making some money here myself. And I've got Scott LaRoe with me right now. We're talking a little bit about the story you've been seeing on the front page of the papers around the area about our Williams County Commissioners and whether we sell a piece of property up by the county home or not. And we're going to discuss a couple other things before I let him go here. Right now, it's 20 minutes before 10 o'clock here on the Cube.
Total Collision Center, Vortex.
LaRoe with me, and this morning we're talking a little bit about the property up by Hillside Country Living and the decision the other day by the Williams County Commissioners to not sell, but the discussion that's going on. And I guess the reason I have him in here is because I like to have people, and one thing that I enjoy about Scott, and everybody that knows Scott knows that he will stand up and speak his mind, tell you what he thinks, and generally he comes with all these numbers and his facts and his figures. after he's done a little bit of homework, and I like that. We are missing that in this world an awful lot nowadays. It used to be that way, Scotty. I mean, we used to have people who would do exactly this, and there were a bunch of them in this community and every community in the world. We've kind of gotten desensitized to that. We've kind of gotten lazy, for a lack of a better description, as humans. Oh, it's all going to work out. It's going to go that way whether we do anything or we don't do anything. I think it's really important, especially now, that people start to do a little homework, start to think things through, start to get their input known, because they can influence a lot of the things that are happening around them at this point in time.
Absolutely, you can. Like I said, you hear that a lot of people say, what good is it going to do for me to say anything? They're going to do what they want anyway. And that's not true. And you know, if you go to these commissioners' meetings, typically it's the 3 commissioners and the Brian Times there.
Right.
And so, you know, if a commissioner doesn't think anybody cares, or they think they're making good decisions and nobody says anything, if they just want to bicker on the streets, you know, that's not the way to get your message out. Much as I really don't care for Facebook,
sure,
it is a good avenue. I mean, I'm not all that computer. I don't have time to sit in the computer and do all this stuff. But when issues come up like this, you know, the Citizens for a Better Williams County, which is I know the commissioners watch that and they look at that, and it's a place for people to do it and talk about things. And I think that's one of the reasons why these fellas, they saw that people care about this, and then so they did the right thing, and they brought up another meeting, said, okay, let's have this for public discussion here.
Yes.
And when they did that, we had 15 people in there instead of 2 in the previous meeting. And, you know, when they did the Lick Creek project, they advertised we're going to have a meeting at the Wesley United Methodist Church, and I think there was 600 people there, standing room only. And you know, a lot of them had pitchforks, and they were ready to really talk about this any way they could. But to get the public involved, and that's the thing. How do we do it in today's busy world when everybody's got things to do? And you know, the younger generation, they're so desensitized to the way things run, and they don't really understand what's happening, and they may not agree with it, but people are afraid to speak out, and they're afraid to, you know, being a business owner. I hear so many business owners say, you know, I'm not going to say anything because it's going to hurt my business.
Right.
I'm sorry. I maybe it's not a great decision for me to get out and stump about this stuff, but it's just who I am, what I do. I'm not going to just sit there and wake up at 3 a.m. and say, good golly, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? You got to get out and ask questions. And
yeah, you do. And to the commissioner's defense, if they don't hear from anybody, okay, if they were going to do this,
sure,
and nobody calls them, nobody says anything, what are they going to assume? They're going to assume that everybody's on the same page that they're on. Okay, oh, sure. Nobody said anything, so, gee, Scott, we just went ahead and sold the ground. You know,
right.
Nobody really seemed to care, all right? And it seemed to make sense on our side to take the money and do whatever they're going to do, pay off a debt that they have, or do whatever they want to do. So it's important for people to be able to stand up and say, hold on a minute, are you thinking about this? Are we doing this? And take a stand. And because at that point in time, I think you see they do listen at that point. They put a stop on everything. Whether that's going to stop it for good or not, who knows? So that means that if you really believe it shouldn't be sold, we need to keep talking to them. Really, you need to keep saying things.
Well, yeah, I think it's been a good thing that they had a resolution to not sell any of this property, step back a little bit, and now they're doing the research and looking at it, and hopefully when they do this research and take a close look at it, it won't come back up.
Right.
And when it does, if it does, I certainly hope that there's some sort of advertising that people will know about it and be able to go there and put their input in. And you know, and it's funny, you know, you start to look into this stuff, and you start to, okay, what kind of decisions are we making here? Let's just talk about the land sale itself.
Sure.
I mean, you know, when I heard about this, and I happened to go up to the commissioner's office to get put on the agenda to speak about it. While I was in there was a few things laying around in there, and I said, you know, what do you ask for first? It's not an easy thing to. What information should I gather on? So I went up there and I said, you know, what do you have on this? Can I see the realty contract that you've signed? Look at something like it. It just happened to be there. She said, well, sure, here you go, and gives me a copy of it. And I get to reading this, and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to pay 10% to a realtor to sell a chunk of farmland.
Okay.
10%
right.
buyer's premium, which means whoever buys that property would have to pay 10% to the realtor. So on their targeted $300,000 sale price, The realtor was going to receive $30,000. Man, oh man, is that the way it goes? I've never sold property, so I get on the phone and I call one of the realtors involved here, and I said, hey, I got this 40-acre field out here by the golf course, and I'm thinking maybe we need to sell it, get some quick cash. What's going to cost me to sell that property? 40 acres? He said, well, it's negotiable. Everything's negotiable. Okay, so what would you? Where are we starting at? Well, 5 or 6%.
Okay, all right.
5 or 6%. Okay, so 5 or 6%. And when a realtor tells me, or anybody tells me that I'm negotiating with, I've bought several houses. It's 5% or probably 4%.
There's some downward flexibility there.
Oh yeah, you're going to sell one chunk of property. We're not going to divide it up into lots. We're not going to do this. One chunk of property. So
yeah.
I'm like, okay, 5%. Why are we paying 10%?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, that's what we did with the county jail when we sold it.
Okay.
Oh,
right.
Okay. So we made a mistake when we sold the jail. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
That doesn't sit with me very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and you start looking, and the more you look, the more you find. And now I talk to people about the CRP land out there. Well, how are they managing the property anyway? Let's just look at the CRP. So I did some FOIA requests, which is a Freedom of Information, and went to the FSA office out there who handle that, and I also went to the commissioner's office to get the same information. A lot of times you go to two different places, you match them up, make sure that everything jives. And well, the commissioner told me, Brian Davis told me, well, we don't have that information up here. You have to go to the FSA office.
Okay, all right.
Okay. I say, you mean you signed a contract for over $120,000 and you don't retain a copy in your office? Okay. So I give the FOIA request. I'd like to have that in writing. I haven't received anything yet.
Okay.
That was on the 6th. So then I went to the FSA office and did the same thing there, and they said, well, it's going to take 20 days. Haven't received that there. But what I did find out, I found out that they were not in compliance. And when you're not in compliance with your CRP land, what happens is at the 5-year midterm, if you're not in compliance, then they tell you, hey, this is what you need to do, and we'll pay for half of it to get you guys brought up to speed.
Compliance meaning what kind of things do you have any feel for it, or are you still waiting on
Sure,
that?
no. When you're in compliance, because I did ask them the questions on just general. I'm thinking about putting property into CRP. Can you tell me the rules and how this works?
Sure.
And so they gave me what happens is at the 5-year, when you put land into CRP, depending on how many acres it is, they stipulate, okay, you need to put a food plot out there.
Okay.
On these two properties, there's actually 3 separate locations, but only 2 of them have the food plot, and they're supposed to be between 4 and 5 acres. I've heard 4 acres from one county or the person that's actually planting it, and I've heard 5 acres from Lou Hilkert stated that at the meeting, so I'm not sure, 4 or 5 acres. Well, it hadn't been planted for 2 years. And then at the midterm compliance, it wasn't planted. So I talked to one of the board members, past board members at the Farm Service Agency, and he says, this guy, and I hate to say hearsay, but he said it's some of the worst CRP land I've seen in the county. Mm-hmm. And when they brought that to our board's attention, and that the county did not respond to them in the 3 years, now we won't pay for half to get that property into compliance. So I get the report from that Terry Rummel used in his calculations to make sure this is a good property, and what they didn't have any 2015 expenses, which tells me there was nothing done there. They couldn't have had food plots, and I'm confused as to why there's a 2014, because I was told by the person that takes care of the property that he didn't do anything that year also. So like I say, I really don't like to go by anything people tell me, because you're talking about memory, people forget, anyhow. Sure. And so I look at these costs, and I look at this, and they had $1,500 in 14, $1,400 in 13, and here in 16 they paid $4,219. And all they did was mow. They still hadn't planted any food plots.
Okay.
So when you're out of compliance, unfortunately, and this is what I heard from the board member, is they put that out there, and what would happen is they would want all their money back that they've paid you because you're not listening to what they tell you you're supposed to do to stay in compliance.
Okay.
Well, they've paid us about $120,000 so far.
Okay.
So how horrible would that be if the county has to cough up that kind of money? And if you really truly go by the federal guidelines, that's what's supposed to happen. I hope to God it doesn't happen.
Sure,
that'd be horrible.
Yeah, no, and hopefully you're right.
And
but maybe we're pointing out at this point in time an issue that needs to be addressed here quickly so that it doesn't happen.
Well, absolutely. And you know, the thing of it is, if you don't ignore what they're talking about, I mean, even if they say, okay, we want our money back, I mean, there's an appeal process. So hopefully it wouldn't happen that way. And hopefully the federal government would look at it and say, okay, you guys are, we understand maybe it was wet that year and this and that. But for whatever reason, if you don't get this in compliance, you know, we're going to work with you. I mean, nothing everybody hates worse than the federal government having to pay them all the money. So let's hope that doesn't go that direction.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate your coming in, and I would welcome any comments from the county commissioners or anybody else that's involved with this, because I think it's a topic that now all of a sudden is starting to find its way into the coffee shops around Williams County. People are starting to talk about it. They're wanting to know what's going on. And I think it's a good thing to get people out and getting them involved again with this kind of thing. Question before I let you go, man, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now.
Uh-oh.
Are you running? Are you running for county commissioner?
I haven't even thought about it, to tell you the truth. This is just something that, you know, just like that Lick Creek thing. It's just something I felt strongly about. And,
sure.
You know, it's tough. I ran for county commissioner. I tell you what, the people that you're going against, they bring things up in your family. My great grandma probably robbed a bank or something. They'll probably figure it out, you know. And it's tough on not just you. It's tough on your family. So it's not a very good taste left in my mouth for that sort of thing. But I'm not going to rule it out.
Okay, all right. And I'll tell you, I will point out as well, having been part of the city for 10 years, it is not an easy job. There are an awful lot of things that do come out, and you are a public figure, so all of a sudden those things are legal, and they're very, they're there for everybody, and but it's not an easy situation.
Well, you know, I don't mind talking about the things that I've done. I
Sure.
mean, if you did something when you were younger or whatever, I mean, if things happen, and they happen, let's move on, let's grow from it. But it's when they print things that are lies. That's the part that really tears you up, and it's just to plant seeds, you know that. So
yeah, it's a difficult situation, and politics is a nasty business, man.
Oh my
There's
God,
no doubt about that.
Yeah,
It's really bad. It really is.
Absolutely.
Scotty, thanks for stopping by. Keep us in the loop as far as what you're seeing and what you're finding. And again, if there's any county commissioners out there, I'll reach out to Brian Davis and Terry and see if they'd like to come in and chat with us as well. But I think it's really good for people in this area to keep an eye on things, especially when it has to do with the sale of land or dollars that are really the county's. They are ours. They are our property. They are our dollars. They are our facilities. And we have been lax oftentimes in not paying attention to them. So I think it's good for us to be a little more proactive nowadays, too.
Well, you know, it really is good. There's a lot of people out there that care, and there's just a lot of people who just don't know what avenue to take to get their voice heard. And a lot of people, they just don't, they don't even write a letter to the editor. You're putting yourself out there, and a lot of people just aren't ready to do something like that. So let's just hope they don't decide to tear the courthouse down and sell that back to us just to keep it.
I don't think they'll do that, but you never can tell. Scott LaRose been our guest here today to start everything off.